I used to think I was a pretty laid-back mother-in-law. I never interfered in their marriage, never offered unsolicited advice, well, mostly, and after my husband passed 5 years ago, I did my best to not be a burden. I cooked when they visited, babysat when asked, smiled through holidays where I was shuffled to the least flattering corner of every group photo. You know, the usual MIL gymnastics. But this year took the cake, burned it, and served it with a side of betrayal. Let me set the scene. It's the second week of December. My daughter-in-law, Rachel, drops by for one of her, quote, check-in visits, which basically means she comes over to borrow something or ask for free babysitting under the guise of family bonding. We're having tea in my sunroom when she sets down her mug, and, with that overly bright tone she uses when she's about to say something awful but wants to sound sweet, chirps, "So, my whole family is spending Christmas here this year. It's only 25 people." I blinked. "Here?" I asked. "As in, my house?" She nodded like we were discussing ordering pizza, not hosting a small wedding reception. "It just makes sense. Your place has the most space. Everyone's so excited. We'll bring food too." She added that last bit like it was a gift, not an obligation. I smiled, and that's when everything started. "Perfect," I said. "I'm going on vacation. You cook. I'm not a servant." She turned pale. Pale, like she saw a ghost. Like I'd slapped her with a cold fish. Like she realized, for the first time, that I might not be the doormat she'd mistaken me for. The silence was thick. You could have stirred it with a spoon. "You're going on vacation?" she repeated, voice tight. "Yes," I said, standing to collect our mugs. "A week in Santa Fe. Booked it last night. Felt like the right time to start a new tradition. One where I'm not treated like unpaid staff at my own holiday." She tried to backpedal. "Oh, did she try? But everyone's expecting it here. We already told people. And my mom can't cook for that many." I shrugged. "Then they can potluck it. Or hire catering. Or cancel. Not my problem." I'd never seen Rachel speechless before. It was kind of glorious. She left in a huff, muttering about communication and how I was being unreasonable. But I didn't budge. I booked a spa suite that night, packed the next day, and by December 23rd, I was sipping a margarita under a New Mexican sunset while they wrestled with turkey logistics and folding chairs. That should have been the end of it. But here's where it gets wild. Because 5 days after I got back, I found something that changed everything. And suddenly, my little act of rebellion became the start of uncovering something so much worse than a hijacked holiday. When I came home from Santa Fe, the house was surprisingly intact. I half expected to find cranberry stains on my drapes or my good china chipped into mosaic tiles. But no, Rachel had done a decent job pretending to be a responsible hostess. Almost too decent. The dishwasher was unloaded, the counters wiped down. Even the fireplace had been cleaned, which was strange because they never used the fireplace. I didn't think much of it until the following Thursday, when I went to grab a mixing bowl from the back of the pantry and saw it, a thick manila folder tucked behind my waffle iron. My private folder, the one I kept labeled House Docs, Do Not Touch. Inside were copies of the deed to my home, utility account statements, and a note in someone else's handwriting. A shopping list? At first, I thought nothing of it. Maybe Rachel had been snooping for some logistics, but then I saw the note, written in blue ink. Check if she has a living trust. No mention of will. Need this cleaned up by spring. Underlined. I stared at it, cold blooming in my gut. Who the hell writes that in someone else's personal folder? I sat down, pulled out my phone, and made the mistake that turned suspicion into certainty. I opened our family group chat, the one labeled Xmas Chaos 2025. I'd ignored it during my vacation. A small joy I allowed myself, but now I needed to see what had been said, what plans were made, what tone they took without me there. Only, it was gone. The chat didn't exist on my phone. Weird. So I did what any nosy mother would do. I texted my granddaughter. "Sweetheart, can you remind me what you and Mommy sent in the Christmas group chat?" She replied with, "Which one, the one with Rachel's side or ours?" Bingo! Turns out there was another group, a secret one created by Rachel, with everyone but me in it. My granddaughter, bless her honesty, sent me screenshots. That's when I saw it. A message from Rachel, dated 2 weeks before Christmas. Don't worry, everyone. She's old. She'll just say yes like always. We've got the space, and I'll handle her. Worst case, I'll call her bluff. And this one, from my son. If she throws a fit, maybe it's time we start moving her toward assisted living. Her memory's been slipping. My memory? I had just driven 900 miles alone, navigated rental cars and online bookings, and memorized my entire spa itinerary down to the mineral bath schedule. Slipping my ass! Then came the kicker. The message that cracked it all open. Rachel again. Besides, if we time it right, the lawyer said we could simplify everything. Clean title, no drama. We'll just explain it's best for everyone. Clean title. Lawyer. Suddenly my son and DIL weren't just being inconsiderate. They were planning something. Something legal. Something personal. Something dangerous. I felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me. This wasn't about a holiday. It was about my life. And I was going to find out exactly what they were trying to steal, before they realized I knew. After reading those group chat screenshots, I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan, every betrayal circling in my head like the blades above. My own son, my daughter-in-law, planning my removal like I was a cluttered sofa, plotting to clean up legal documents like I was some forgotten trust fund with a signature away from erasure. By morning, I wasn't devastated. I was pissed. And then came the dinner invitation. Rachel called me like nothing happened. Hey, thought maybe we could do a little post-holiday dinner this weekend. Just the four of us. You know, make up for you missing Christmas. The acting was impressive, Oscar-worthy. I could practically hear her grinning through the phone. Sure, I said cheerfully. That sounds lovely. Should I bring dessert? Oh, no, she chirped. We've got it all covered. Just relax. Right. Relax while you try to sign away my estate with a wine glass in my hand. I knew this wasn't a peace offering. It was a setup. A friendly little evening designed to butter me up and hand me papers disguised as routine updates. They probably thought they could get me tipsy and push a pen into my hand between courses. But what they didn't know was I had already called my lawyer. His name's Howard. He's 78, wears bow ties, and plays poker with judges. The man once stared down the IRS and lived to gloat about it. I sent him the screenshots, booked a meeting, and brought him the folder I'd found behind my waffle iron. His verdict? This is premeditated. They're setting up power of attorney and likely laying the groundwork for a capacity challenge. If they can prove you're unfit, they can act on your behalf. I stared at him. They want me declared incompetent? I asked. Not in so many words. But yes, he said, removing his glasses. They want your house, your accounts, your authority. And the paperwork in that folder? They've already started. That was the moment I stopped being scared and started getting strategic. So when I showed up for dinner Saturday night, I brought a little something extra. A decoy folder perfectly prepared by Howard. Same manila look, same number of pages. But the content? Harmless. One copy of my old grocery list, a few expired coupons, and a recipe for lemon bars. Rachel opened the door in pearls and fake warmth. Come in, come in! We're so glad you could make it. I smiled, my decoy folder tucked into my handbag like a bomb. Dinner was roasted chicken. Conversation was light. But I could feel the tension under every polite laugh. Every clink of cutlery was a countdown. Then, after dessert, it came. Oh, by the way, my son said, rising from the table and casually fetching a folder from the sideboard. We've been meaning to talk about some future planning stuff. Just in case of emergencies, of course. He placed it gently beside my wine glass. Rachel leaned in, her voice syrupy. It's nothing scary, just, power of attorney forms. Simple things. So we can help you if something ever happens. I opened the folder slowly. Then just as slowly, I opened my handbag. Funny, I said sweetly, pulling out my folder. I brought some documents, too. Rachel's smile faltered. My son's eyes flicked to mine, then to the folder. He paled. This one, I said, tapping it, was prepared by my attorney. It outlines who actually holds power of attorney as of last week. Hint, it's not either of you. I paused. Oh, and there's an official cease and desist notice regarding any further attempts to modify, forge, or submit legal documents on my behalf. Rachel's jaw dropped. My son looked like he'd swallowed a fork. I stood up, steady as a rock. You wanted a dinner conversation about the future? Here's mine. You don't make any decisions for me. Not now, not ever. And then I left. But trust me, that was only the beginning. The Monday after that dinner ambush, I walked into Howard's office and told him 3 things. 1. I was done playing nice. 2. I wanted everything they'd touched combed through, finances, accounts, legal filings. 3. I wanted someone watching them. He nodded slowly, scribbled a note, and then said, I know just the guy. Enter Walt. Walt's the kind of private investigator who looks like a retired gym teacher but reads people like novels. Within a week, he had my entire family mapped out like a crime board. Every account they accessed, every lawyer they consulted, and, most disturbingly, a recent inquiry from my daughter-in-law to a senior care facility in another state. That's right. While smiling in my face and pretending Christmas was just too big to host elsewhere, Rachel had been researching full-time assisted living in Florida. I live in upstate New York. She had no intention of me ever coming back. But Walt found something even worse. My house. The one I've lived in for 32 years. Where I raised my children, buried my husband, planted the peonies out front. It wasn't just my house anymore. 2 months prior, while I was recovering from a mild stroke, nothing debilitating, just a scare, Rachel had filed a petition for co-ownership of the property, citing increased caregiver responsibilities. She'd attached a fake letter supposedly written by me, stating I wanted her added to the deed for peace of mind. Howard was livid. I was shaking. That signature, he said, pointing, isn't even close to yours. No kidding. They were trying to take everything one paper cut at a time. So I gave Walt a new job. Find out what else they've forged, moved, or manipulated. If they were bold enough to fake a signature, they were bold enough to do worse. And Walt? He delivered. Turns out Rachel had quietly opened a joint account using my social security number. The account had a single deposit of $50,000. My money, transferred from a closed CD I hadn't touched in years, and had been used to pay for their Christmas expenses, including 2 Dyson air purifiers, an outdoor catering tent, matching silk pajamas for all 25 guests, and a $3,700 consultation with a shady estate planner in Westchester. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. They were robbing me, bit by bit, like I was already dead. But they'd made one mistake. They underestimated just how alive I still was. So I called Howard. We filed fraud reports, froze all assets they had even sniffed, and initiated a full investigation with the State Elder Protection Unit. And then, I did the thing no one saw coming. I called a meeting, in my house, at my table, just the 3 of us. Me, my son, and Rachel. I served tea. I smiled. And then I handed them each a manila envelope. Open it, I said. Inside were copies of the fraud reports, legal filings, a notarized letter revoking any permissions they ever thought they had, and a final page titled, Notice of Intent to Pursue Criminal Charges. Rachel's hand started shaking. My son looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 seconds. I suggest you both leave, I said softly, and don't come back without a lawyer. They left in stunned silence. But the story doesn't end there, because something else was about to surface, something from Rachel's past that would blow the lid off this entire nightmare. I thought I'd uncovered the worst of it, but I was wrong. Because the next bomb didn't come from Walt. It came from a woman named Erica. She emailed me at 2:11 a.m., the subject line reading, You don't know me, but you need to. At first, I almost deleted it. Spam, I assumed. But something about the phrasing, the quiet desperation between those words, made me open it. Inside was a short message. I was married to Rachel before your son. She ruined me. She's done this before. She's going to do worse to you. Please call me." And attached? Scans of court documents, financial disclosures, restraining orders. I sat there in the dark, my heart thudding against my ribs. Turns out, Rachel was married once before, to a man named Alan Prescott, software developer, quiet, kind, with a trust fund from his grandfather and a townhouse in Connecticut. They'd only been married 3 years before everything fell apart. According to Erica, Alan's sister, Rachel drained his accounts, got power of attorney under the guise of mental health concerns, and sold his condo while he was in recovery from a car accident. Sound familiar? Alan tried to fight back, but Rachel had laid the groundwork too well. Statements from doctors she'd manipulated, documents with his forged signature, even audio clips taken out of context. By the time he untangled the mess, he was broke and living in a rented room over a garage. Rachel walked away with a settlement and a clean record. I printed the email, the attachments, all of it, and dropped them on Howard's desk the next morning. He read in silence for 10 minutes, then said, "She's a predator. This is her pattern." But then he frowned, tapping one page. "She didn't just do this to Alan. She learned from it. She's evolved." I didn't understand what he meant until Walt called the next day. "Got something weird," he said. "Your name is listed as a co-signer on an investment portfolio in the Cayman Islands. Care to explain?" I almost dropped the phone. I've never even been out of the country. Turns out, Rachel had quietly used a copy of my passport and social security number from those helping with paperwork days last year to open a brokerage account, international, untraceable unless you're looking, and she'd been slowly transferring money from my dormant accounts into it over the past 6 months. Almost $340,000. Gone. But now that we'd found it, it wasn't gone. Not quite. Howard moved fast. Emergency injunctions, legal freezes, asset recovery protocols, all the grown-up legal fireworks. But that's when it hit me. They hadn't just been trying to take care of me. They were preparing to replace me, paperwork to take over my assets, plans to move me into a facility. And now this, offshore laundering using my name, all while smiling at my birthday brunch. I sat in my reading chair that night, fire crackling beside me, holding the photos of my husband and wondering how we got here. How the boy I raised, who used to fall asleep on my chest, who cried when he got his first C, who asked me to sing to him when he was scared of the dark, had become this. A man who chose someone like her over his own mother. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Because Erica had offered me more than just truth. She offered evidence. The kind that could put Rachel behind bars. And I was ready to use it. I met Erica in person 2 days later. We chose a quiet cafe in Hudson, the kind with classical music and ceramic mugs that feel like they've held 100 secrets. She was younger than I expected, maybe mid-30s. Dark hair pulled back in a low bun, no makeup, but eyes sharp enough to slice through glass. She looked like someone who'd had to grow up too fast. I recognized that look. I wore it once too. "I'm sorry to drag you into this," she said, sliding a flash drive across the table. But I couldn't let her do it again. Inside that flash drive were things I never should have seen, but needed to. Audio clips. One was Rachel speaking to a man I didn't recognize. No, she's alone. No friends, no family that checks in. Just the son. And he's on board if the paperwork's in place. "But are you sure she doesn't suspect anything?" the man asked. Rachel laughed. "She still uses a flip phone. If she gets suspicious, I'll just play the grieving daughter-in-law card again. Worked last time." I felt like I might throw up. Another clip, this one muffled, recorded on what Erica said was a baby monitor in Rachel's last home. "Just keep her confused, exhausted. You do that for 3 weeks, and bam, dementia diagnosis. The doctors don't even question it. And then the bombshell. Once we file for guardianship, it's game over. We liquidate, simplify, and walk away clean." They were literally planning how to make me look senile, like it was some sick strategy game. Erica sat across from me, jaw tight, watching my face. She did it to Alan. She was grooming his mother next, but the woman died before she could pull it off. You're the next Mark. I gripped the mug tightly. My fingers were ice. And my son? I whispered. Erica exhaled slowly. Complicit. Maybe not from the start. But now? He's all in. He was in the room during at least 2 planning sessions. She opened her phone and showed me a photo. It was from a restaurant in Manhattan. Rachel, my son, and a man in a blazer. Estate planner, she said. I tracked the card he used. Same guy she used on Alan. I sat there, stunned. I don't understand, I said finally. What's the end game? Money? My house? Erica shook her head. It's not just money, it's control. Rachel doesn't want resources. She wants ownership. She wants your life. And she'll take it piece by piece if you let her. And for the first time in my life, I felt truly afraid. This wasn't just a betrayal. This was psychological warfare. So I did the only thing I could think of. I went to the police. Howard came with me. We brought the flash drive, the account numbers, the altered documents. I gave them everything. And to my surprise, they took it seriously. Apparently, elder exploitation cases had spiked, and my case was a legal goldmine. Clear forgeries, audio evidence, a financial paper trail, and a pattern of behavior backed by Rachel's previous marriage. They assigned a detective the same day. But here's where the story gets strange. Because the very next morning, my son showed up at my house, alone, and he was crying. He was standing on my front porch, shoulders hunched, hands jammed into the pockets of his coat like a boy about to confess something to the principal. It was 7:43 a.m. I hadn't had my coffee. My slippers were still on, but something about the look on his face made me open the door without a word. "Mom," he said, voice cracking, "I need to talk." I didn't invite him in. I just stepped aside, arms crossed, and let him walk himself into the kitchen he once knew like the back of his hand. The same kitchen where I made him grilled cheese when he had strep throat, and where he practiced his proposal speech for Rachel. He looked like hell. Dark circles. Pale. Like the guilt had finally started to eat him alive. He sat at the table without asking. "Rachel, she's not who I thought she was," he said, staring down at his hands. "I think she's been lying to me." Now he gets it? "What gave it away?" I asked calmly. The offshore account? The forged documents? The part where she was planning to have me diagnosed with dementia and sent to a facility against my will? He looked up, shocked. "You know?" I laughed. Bitter. Low. "I've known for weeks. The only reason you're sitting here and not in a courtroom is because I wanted to see if you'd crawl back on your own or wait for a subpoena?" He winced. "Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't know the extent." "Don't lie to me, Daniel," I snapped. "You were in the group chat. You were at the meeting with the estate planner. You signed the damn account forms." "I was scared," he said suddenly. "Okay, I was scared we were going to lose the house. Rachel said you were acting strange, that maybe you weren't handling things well, and that if we just simplified things." "Simplify means steal when you say it like that," I interrupted. He buried his face in his hands. "I didn't know about the offshores. I didn't know about Erica or the other guy. I swear to God, I thought we were just helping." I finished for him. "You thought you were helping by undermining my independence, forging legal access, and conspiring to gaslight your own mother?" Silence. "Do you want forgiveness?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "You want to fix it?" He nodded again, more desperate. "Then start by testifying," I said. "Against her." That made him freeze. "You want me to testify?" I leaned across the table, steady, cold. "I want you to choose, me or her. Not both. You don't get both anymore." He was quiet for a long time. Then, with a broken voice, he whispered, "I'll do it." But the truth? I didn't believe him. Because hours later, Rachel sent me a message. Just 3 words. "You'll regret this." And I knew then she wasn't going down quietly. The message from Rachel came at 2:17 p.m. 3 words. You'll regret this. No emojis. No punctuation. Just that icy, matter-of-fact threat. I read it once, then again, and instead of fear, I felt calm. Because if Rachel had resorted to open threats, it meant she was out of stealth. Her subtle manipulations, her fake sweetness, her behind-the-scenes scheming, all of that had failed. And now she was showing her teeth. I called Howard. She's going to hit back, I said. He didn't hesitate. Then let's make sure when she does, we're holding the net. That net came in the form of preemptive legal strikes, freezing every joint asset they'd touched, alerting the banks of suspected identity theft, placing a formal notification with my health provider in case anyone tried to claim medical power of attorney, and locking down my credit. But Rachel? She didn't wait. 2 days later, I got a phone call from Child Protective Services. Apparently, someone had submitted an anonymous report claiming I was mentally unstable and creating a dangerous environment for my grandchildren. The caseworker sounded uncomfortable, embarrassed even. We're required to follow up, she said, but based on your age and the wording of the report, it seems suspicious. I invited her over. I baked lemon squares. I showed her my house, my medication, which consisted of nothing stronger than calcium and antihistamines, my spotless record, and my cozy guest bedroom where my granddaughter occasionally slept over. The woman left after 40 minutes. This is a retaliation complaint, she said, not even trying to hide her disgust. Happens more than you'd think when money's involved. That night, I sat in the armchair by the window and looked out at the street I'd lived on for 32 years. Rachel wasn't just trying to ruin my finances. She was trying to destroy my name. The next blow came via social media. She posted a long, teary video about, quote, toxic in-laws, about trying to help an aging relative who refuses to accept support, and about emotional abuse from older generations. She never said my name. But she didn't have to. The comment section was filled with sympathy. She's so brave. You're doing the right thing, Rachel. Sometimes family is the most toxic thing of all. My own friends started calling. What's going on? Is this about you? And one brave woman, Jeanette, my neighbor from 2 doors down, called and simply said, I believe you, and I'm watching. Bless her. But the real moment, the one that shook me, came the next morning, when I found the dead roses, left on my front porch, wrapped in black ribbon. No note, just a message. Rachel had escalated. Again. So I did what I promised myself I wouldn't do unless it got personal. I made one final phone call to someone who used to work for Rachel, a former assistant, someone Erica said had stories to tell and receipts to prove it. Because if Rachel wanted war, she was about to get one, and I don't fight fair. Her name was Zoe. She used to work for Rachel back when Rachel had her consulting firm, which, from what I've gathered, was more like a self-promotional pyramid, held together with Instagram quotes and overpriced coffee meetings. Erica gave me her number. Zoe was hesitant at first. I don't want trouble, she said. Rachel's intense. I'm not asking for trouble, I replied. I'm giving you the chance to stop it. That got her attention. We met at a coffee shop near the courthouse. Public, safe, neutral ground. She wore sunglasses, a hoodie, and the nervous energy of someone who'd seen too much and said too little for far too long. But once she started talking, it poured out of her. She does this thing, Zoe said, voice low. She starts by making herself the hero, always helping someone, some elderly neighbor, a sick aunt, a coworker in crisis. She inserts herself, gains their trust, then takes over, little by little. Zoe handed me a folder, her own manila envelope. I swear I'm going to develop a manila phobia by the end of this. Inside were copies of emails Rachel had dictated to Zoe to send on behalf of vulnerable clients. Fake invoices billed to closed accounts. One forged letter of recommendation, written in my name, praising Rachel for her ethical standards and family devotion. I'd never written it. Hell, I'd never even seen it. Zoe had screen recordings of Rachel accessing banking portals under other people's credentials. A voice memo where Rachel openly joked about her senile mother-in-law's hidden savings. Even photos, one of Rachel holding my passport, which I hadn't seen in over a year. She kept everything, Zoe said. Paper trails. She's arrogant like that. I sat there in stunned silence. How many people has she done this to? I asked. Zoe looked me dead in the eye. That I know of? 4. But you're the only one fighting back. I took a breath. You just became my star witness. Later that night, I gave everything to Howard and the detective. Every file, every screenshot, every whispered horror Zoe had trusted me with. We drafted subpoenas, built timelines, and sent a formal request to freeze Rachel's consulting business under fraud suspicion. And then I did the one thing I knew would set her completely off balance. I showed up to her workplace, wearing pearls, holding coffee. "Good morning," I said sweetly at the front desk. "Tell Rachel her mother-in-law's here. I brought pastries." The receptionist looked like she wanted to vanish into the floor. Rachel came out moments later, eyes blazing. "What the hell are you doing here?" I smiled, handed her a croissant. "Just thought I'd swing by and remind you. I'm not afraid of you." She stared at me. "You really want to do this?" I leaned in. "I'm already doing it." And then I left. But as I stepped outside, I spotted a man leaning against a car across the street, watching, taking photos. He wasn't press. He wasn't law enforcement. And I had a terrible feeling Rachel had hired someone too. At first, I told myself I was being paranoid. The man by the car across the street, maybe he was just a nosy pedestrian. Maybe he wasn't taking photos of me. But the next day, he was there again. This time parked a few houses down, sitting in a black sedan, engine off, sunglasses on, despite it being cloudy. The day after that, a different car. Same man, different angle. And on the third day, I saw him follow me, from the grocery store to the dry cleaner. He never got too close, just close enough to say, "I see you." I took a photo of him on my phone and sent it to Howard and the detective. Howard responded first. "Do not engage. This is intimidation. Document everything." But the detective? He called. "Your instincts are right," he said. "Rachel's likely hired private security, maybe even a fixer. These types aren't illegal unless they cross the line, but we'll issue a no-contact order if he gets within range." That night, I double-locked my doors, closed every blind, left the hallway light on like I hadn't done since my husband died. And around 2:30 a.m., I heard it. The tap. Soft. Rhythmic. Tap. 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 I slipped out of bed, heart pounding, and crept to the living room. There, on the glass of my front window, was a single word scrawled in what looked like black Sharpie. Enough! No footprints in the snow. No sign of movement. Just that word. Like a threat. Like a warning. I called the police. They came fast, filed a report, dusted the window. No prints. No camera footage. My system had been disconnected. When I checked the fuse box, the outdoor circuit had been cut. I sat in my kitchen wrapped in a blanket, sipping cold tea, and trying to keep my hands from shaking. Rachel wasn't just escalating legally now, she was sending messages. But what she didn't know, I'd already sent a message of my own. Because that same day, we'd filed the criminal complaint with the DA's office. Forgery, fraud, identity theft, attempted coercion. And thanks to Zoe's files, Erica's testimony, and Walt's investigation, we had more than enough. Howard's last words to me that afternoon rang in my ears now. "This isn't about surviving anymore. This is about winning." And I wasn't going to just win. I was going to bury her with the truth. But I had one more card to play. Because deep in my closet, behind a false panel I hadn't touched in over a decade, was a locked box Robert had left me. He always said, "If anything ever happens, go there. You'll know what to do." I had never opened it. But that night, I did. And what I found inside changed everything. The box was heavy, black steel, dusty from years untouched, and sealed with a combination lock that only I would know the last 4 digits of our anniversary. It clicked open with a satisfying snap, and inside was Robert. Not literally, of course, but his legacy, his protection, his message from beyond. First, there was a handwritten letter, folded neatly, yellowed at the edges. The ink was Robert's. I recognized the slant of his cursive from decades of birthday cards and grocery lists. My dearest Sylvia, if you're reading this, it means something went wrong. And if I know you, you're not taking it lying down. Good. I never trusted Rachel. I saw in her eyes the first time she smiled at you. That hunger. She's not just after money. She wants control of you, of Daniel, of everything. So, I made arrangements. I just didn't tell you, because I knew you'd try to talk me out of them. You always believed in people longer than you should. Inside this box, you'll find 2 bearer bonds worth $500,000 each. Not traceable. Not linked to any account. Use them if they freeze the assets. A signed copy of my original will. The one where you get everything and Rachel gets nothing. The name and number of someone who owes me a favor. A big one. His name is Arthur Delaney. He used to work with the IRS. If she ever comes for you, use this. Fight smart. Stay quiet until it's time to go loud. I loved you more than my own life, and I still do. In every heartbeat that echoes in this house. I sat there, stunned. Robert knew. All along. And like a true chess player, he'd moved 3 pieces ahead before the first pawn even hit the board. The bearer bonds were real. Dated 1997. Untouched. I'd forgotten we even had them. A remnant from Robert's early financial days when he didn't trust banks. But the will? It was a bomb. Because the copy we'd filed, the one Rachel had helped me re-record after Robert passed, had conveniently removed the original executorship. In that fake version, Daniel was the new executor, and Rachel had oversight if he was, quote, unavailable. But this was the will. Notarized, witnessed, ironclad, and best of all, dated after the one Rachel filed, which made hers null and void. I scanned it, emailed it to Howard, and dropped the physical copy into a fireproof bag. He called back immediately. "Where the hell did you find this?" "In the closet," I said. "I could kiss your dead husband," he muttered. "This changes everything." And then I called the number from the letter. Arthur Delaney answered on the first ring. "Robert's wife?" he said. "He told me if you ever called, I was to drop everything." I told him what happened. By the end of the call, Arthur had already flagged Rachel's Cayman account for tax evasion risk and agreed to draft a report for the DA, highlighting how Rachel's financial behavior mirrored classic fraud laundering patterns. So now, I had Zoe, Erica, Walt, Arthur, Howard, the real will, 2 untouchable bonds, and most of all, I had nothing left to lose. Rachel had tried to turn my family against me, but now I was going to take back everything, publicly, permanently, because in 3 days, we were walking into court, and I was bringing the storm. The morning of the hearing, I wore Robert's favorite color on me, deep navy blue, classic, elegant, unapologetic. I pinned my mother's brooch to my coat and looked myself in the mirror for a long time, not to check my hair, to remind myself, you are not invisible, you are not weak, and you are not alone. The courthouse was buzzing when we arrived. My team, Howard, Walt, Erica, Zoe, each took their place like chess pieces snapping into position. Rachel arrived 10 minutes late. She looked polished, confident, dressed like the kind of woman who thinks appearances still matter when the truth is rising like floodwater around her ankles. Daniel trailed behind her. I hadn't seen him since he came to my house, crying. He avoided my eyes. She didn't. Rachel met my gaze across the courtroom like a woman still clinging to the fantasy that she could win. She gave me a small, cold smile, the kind that says, "You really think this will work?" Oh, honey, it's already working. The judge was a woman in her 60s. Sharp, direct. No nonsense. I liked her immediately. Howard opened with our motion to reinstate the original will, vacate all authority previously granted under Rachel's influence, and initiate a criminal investigation into fraud and elder exploitation. Rachel's attorney, some overly tanned man in a blue tie who reeked of desperation, tried to object. "Your Honor, we believe this is a family dispute, not a legal one." The judge raised an eyebrow. "You believe a forged will and financial manipulation of a vulnerable senior citizen isn't legal grounds?" Blue tie sat down. Howard laid it all out. The group chat screenshots, the forged documents, the secret account, the attempt to shift me into care under false pretenses, the audio recordings, Zoe's testimony. Zoe took the stand first, calm, clear, devastating. She walked the court through every shady move Rachel had orchestrated. Voice notes, emails, digital records, with timestamps and receipts. Rachel tried to look bored, but I saw it. The twitch at her jaw, the tightening fingers. Then came Erica. She testified to Rachel's past. The patterns, the other victims, the settlements, the restraining orders. Rachel's attorney objected. "Irrelevant." The judge shook her head. "It's a pattern of behavior. Continue." Then came the real firecracker. Walt took the stand and explained, in exhausting detail, how Rachel had moved funds offshore using my name, forged financial access, and filed for co-ownership of my home using a falsified signature. Then he dropped the bomb. We traced the offshore account to 3 prior shell corporations, all tied to Rachel under different aliases. The room went silent. Rachel's mask cracked. She leaned toward her attorney, whispering furiously. And then it was my turn. I stood. My hands didn't shake. I told the court what it's like to be treated like furniture in your own life, how I'd been erased, disrespected, stolen from, not just financially, but emotionally. I told them how it feels when your own child lets someone else orchestrate your downfall, because it's easier than standing up. I ended with this. I am not helpless. I am not forgetful. I am not someone you can shove into a room and wait to die. I raised my son with love, and he sold me for comfort. I looked straight at Rachel. But I am done being quiet. The judge recessed for the day. No ruling yet. That comes next. But as we stood to leave, Rachel brushed past me. She leaned in, venom soft in her voice. "You think you've won? You haven't seen what I can do yet." I smiled, truly smiled, for the first time in weeks. "Oh, sweetheart," I whispered. "Neither have you." The ruling came down 48 hours after our court appearance. The judge upheld the original will, Robert's real will, and declared all subsequent documents submitted under Rachel's influence as fraudulent and void. But that wasn't even the best part. The judge authorized a full criminal investigation into Rachel's financial activities, citing probable cause for elder exploitation, wire fraud, and identity theft. And that, my dear reader, is when the house of cards collapsed. Because when we left the courthouse that day, there were cameras waiting. Apparently, one of Zoe's files had accidentally made it into the hands of a local journalist, a very persistent one who'd been sniffing around Rachel's so-called consulting business for months. By sunset, my DIL was trending online. Hudson woman accused of orchestrating financial abuse scheme against elderly mother-in-law. Subhead, multiple victims, offshore accounts. A trail of deception. And the photo? Rachel's booking shot. Because the very next morning, the police served her a warrant right at her office. She was still wearing her heels when they cuffed her. That's how fast it moved. Zoe texted me the video. I watched it twice. Daniel wasn't there. He'd stopped taking Rachel's calls, according to Howard. The minute the DA's office called him for a witness interview, he folded like wet cardboard. I didn't gloat. Okay. I briefly gloated. But then I got quiet. Because when you've been treated like an afterthought for years, when you've been erased, gaslit, dismissed. The moment you win isn't loud. It's silent. It's standing in your kitchen at midnight, barefoot on cooled tile, sipping tea and realizing you don't have to look over your shoulder anymore. The storm is over. Rachel's bail was denied. Too much risk of fleeing. The DA's office found financial ties to multiple false names, and they'd issued international alerts on the Cayman transactions. She's facing up to 25 years if convicted. And that's not including the civil suit I plan to file next, because I will be reclaiming every dollar spent, every lie told, every bit of emotional trauma she thought she could pin on me. As for Daniel, he sent me a letter, a real handwritten one. I don't expect forgiveness, he wrote, but I want you to know, I remember everything. The lunches you packed, the nights you stayed up when I was sick, the way you never missed a concert, even when Dad did. I forgot who you were, but watching you stand up there, I remembered. You're not just my mother. You're the strongest damn person I know. It didn't make everything right, but it was a start. And as I stood in my garden pruning the same peonies Robert once planted, I realized I hadn't just survived Rachel. I had outlived her reign. 3 weeks after Rachel's arrest, my son asked to see me. Not over text, not through a lawyer, in person. I almost said no. Part of me, the part still nursing a deep bruise under the skin, didn't want to give him the satisfaction. But another part, the part that once stayed up 3 nights straight with him when he had chickenpox, said, "You owe it to yourself. Not him, yourself." We met at a little cafe down by the river. Neutral territory. He looked thinner, older, like he'd been carrying 1,000 pounds of shame in his briefcase. And, honestly, good. He stood when I walked in. A small gesture, but one that mattered. We sat across from each other in a booth near the window, just like we used to when he was a boy and still believed I was the son. "Hi, Mom," he said quietly. "Daniel." There was a long pause before he spoke again. "I signed a statement for the DA," he said. "Fully cooperated. Gave them access to everything I had. Emails, financials, the whole thing." I nodded. "I know. They told me." He looked down, hands around a cup he hadn't touched. "I was stupid," he whispered. "I let her twist everything. I thought I was protecting our future, but all I did was burn the past." "You betrayed your own mother," I said flatly. He flinched. "Yes," he said. "I did." Silence again. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a small envelope. "I've been seeing a therapist," he said. "She told me to write this." I opened it. It wasn't long. Maybe 4 paragraphs. But every word was soaked in remorse. And not performative remorse. Real, human, raw apology. He didn't ask for a second chance. He didn't ask for inheritance. He just wrote, "You were my lighthouse. And I let someone convince me it was easier to shut it off than walk toward it." I closed the letter and looked out the window. It was snowing. "I'm selling the house," Daniel said after a moment. "The one Rachel wanted. I don't want it. It doesn't feel like mine. I'll use whatever's left to pay back what she stole." "And after that?" I asked. "I don't know," he said. "Start over. Maybe come visit you once in a while, if you let me." I looked at the boy who used to hold my hand crossing the street, then at the man who had nearly signed away my freedom, and I said the only thing I could. "I'm not ready to let you back in," I said, "but I'm willing to see if you stay at the door." He nodded, tears threatening. "I'll wait, as long as it takes." We parted with a handshake. No hug, not yet, but something had shifted, gently, quietly, like the first crack of thaw in late winter. And as I walked back home, past the place where Rachel's black car used to sit like a shadow waiting to devour me, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Light. It's been 6 months since the courtroom. Rachel is still in custody, awaiting trial. The DA added 3 more charges after reviewing her tax records. Turns out, she was double-dipping on caregiver credits for 3 different people across state lines. The press lost interest after the 4th headline. The story faded from the public eye. But for me, it's only just beginning. I wake up now without checking my locks twice. I tend to my peonies. I have tea with Jeanette from down the street every Tuesday. And sometimes I even laugh, genuinely laugh. I'm rebuilding, not just my accounts or my home, but my trust in myself, in my instincts, in the idea that I don't need to be nice to be safe, that I don't owe anyone silence in the face of cruelty, especially not when they wear it with a smile. Daniel writes me letters once a week. He doesn't push. He just shares stories, memories, reminders of the boy I raised. He's in therapy, working a new job, alone, and for the first time, really reckoning with himself. I haven't invited him over yet, but last week I wrote back. One line. Keep showing me you remember who you are. Maybe one day we'll eat dinner in that kitchen again, but it'll be on my terms. As for me, I've started volunteering at a local center for seniors who faced abuse, financial, emotional, legal. Turns out, my story isn't unique. What is rare is that I caught it early enough to fight back. Most don't. And that's what I want this story to do. Not for sympathy, not for shock, but as a warning. To someone out there who's reading this and has that sinking feeling in their gut. That voice that whispers, something isn't right. Listen to it. Trust it. Because manipulation doesn't always come with red flags. Sometimes it shows up with pie and fake smiles and paperwork, just in case. Sometimes it says, it's only 25 people. And if it does, smile, say perfect, and book the vacation. But also, call a lawyer. Call your real friends. Call your damn self back to life. Because you are not a servant. You are not senile. And you are never, ever too old to take your power back.